Welcome to the channel, where we dive deep into the world's most powerful political, economic, and historical events. Today, we're unpacking one of the most significant geopolitical showdowns of the 21st century, the U.S.-China trade war. It's a conflict that reshaped global supply chains, rattled financial markets, and altered the course of international diplomacy. But it didn't end there. This trade war has also had ripple effects, even influencing Russia's war in Ukraine, and how global alliances are being redrawn in real time. So how did it all start? Why did the world's two largest economies turn against each other? And what does it mean for the future? Let's rewind the clock and trace it all from the beginning. Origins of the trade war. To understand the U.S.-China trade war, we have to go back decades. Ever since China opened up its economy in the late 20th century, the United States and China developed a complex, interdependent economic relationship. The U.S. welcomed China into the World Trade Organization in 2001, hoping that market reforms and trade liberalization would bring China closer to the Western economic model. At first, it seemed like a win-win. American companies got cheaper manufacturing, and Chinese factories boomed with jobs and growth. But over time, the relationship soured. Many U.S. policymakers and businesses started accusing China of intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, and unfair trade practices. China's massive trade surplus with the U.S., totaling over $375 billion by 2017, became a political flashpoint. And then came Donald Trump. Trump declares war. When Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, one of his key campaign promises was to get tough on China. He called out the trade imbalance, slammed previous administrations for being weak, and vowed to bring jobs back to American soil. In 2018, President Trump took the first big step. He imposed tariffs on $34 billion worth of Chinese imports, citing national security concerns under Section 301 of the Trade Act. China hit back with tariffs of its own, targeting American soybeans, pork, and cars. And just like that, a full-blown trade war erupted. This wasn't just a few tariffs. It quickly escalated into hundreds of billions of dollars in penalties and counter-penalties. And global markets? They were on edge. Tariff timeline. Here's a quick breakdown of how the trade war escalated. March 2018, U.S. imposes steel and aluminum tariffs. July 2018, first round of China-specific tariffs. $34 billion in goods affected. August to September 2018, second and third rounds hit. The total climbs to $250 billion. China responds with its own tariffs, hitting the heart of Trump's base, American farmers and industrial states. May 2019, talks break down. Trump raises tariffs again. December 2019, after months of back and forth, the two countries agree to a Phase 1 trade deal. Under this deal, China agreed to buy more U.S. agricultural products and protect intellectual property. In return, the U.S. suspended further tariff hikes. But most of the tariffs stayed in place. Winners and losers. So who won the trade war? That's the million-dollar, or maybe trillion-dollar, question. Some American farmers got government aid to offset their losses. Certain industries saw a bump as U.S.-made goods became more competitive. But overall, many economists agree there were no clear winners. American consumers paid higher prices. Supply chains were disrupted. Chinese exports slowed, but Beijing responded with economic stimulus at home and found new trading partners abroad. And then came the unexpected wild card, COVID-19, the pandemic twist. Just as the trade war was peaking, the world was hit by a pandemic. The global economy froze and supply chains broke down, not just because of tariffs, but because factories shut their doors, shipping routes collapsed, and consumer demand plunged. In the chaos, some of the focus on the trade war faded. But underneath the headlines, the tension never really stopped. In fact, the pandemic exposed how dangerously dependent the U.S. had become on Chinese manufacturing, especially for pharmaceuticals, PP, and electronics. Calls to decouple the U.S. and Chinese economies only grew louder. Biden's strategy. When President Joe Biden took office in 2021, many wondered, would he reverse Trump's hardline stance? The answer? Not really. While Biden changed the tone, focusing more on allies and diplomacy, he kept most of Trump's tariffs in place. The administration launched reviews, maintained pressure on Beijing over tech exports, and promoted a new economic policy, friendshoring, moving supply chains to allied countries instead of rivals like China. In many ways, Biden doubled down on the economic rivalry, but framed it as a battle of systems, democracy versus autocracy, not just trade balances. Tech and national security. As the trade war evolved, it became less about soybeans and steel and more about technology and power. The U.S. banned Huawei, a Chinese telecom giant, from its networks. It restricted semiconductor exports to China. It pressured allies like the Netherlands and Japan to block high-tech equipment sales to Chinese companies. Why? Because in Washington's eyes, the real fight is over who controls the technologies of the future: 5G, AI, robotics, quantum computing. China, for its part, launched its own initiatives, Made in China 2025 and dual circulation strategies to boost self-reliance and innovation. This isn't just a trade war anymore. It's a Cold War 2.0, with tariffs as just one tool in a much bigger game. Global impact. The U.S.-China trade war didn't just affect these two countries, it had global consequences. Countries like Vietnam, Mexico, and India benefited as companies looked for alternatives to Chinese factories. Supply chains shifted, investment flowed to new regions. But for others, like Australia and parts of Europe, it created tough choices. Many nations were caught between their top trading partner, China, and their top security ally, the U.S. And then came the Russia-Ukraine war. Connecting the dots. You might be wondering, what does the trade war have to do with the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Here's the connection. As the U.S. and Europe slapped sanctions on Russia, China stepped in as a lifeline, buying more Russian energy, boosting trade, and maintaining a diplomatic neutral stance. But China also watched how Western sanctions worked and started preparing its own economy for similar treatment should it invade Taiwan or face future conflicts with the West. The trade war taught both sides a lesson. Economic dependence is a vulnerability. And that lesson is now shaping global alliances and military strategy. Where are we now? Today, the U.S. and China remain deeply entangled, economically and politically. Some tariffs have been relaxed, but the core issues remain unresolved: intellectual property, tech dominance, geopolitical influence. The Biden administration continues to restrict high-tech exports and invest in U.S.-based manufacturing. China, meanwhile, is turning inward, focusing on innovation and strengthening ties with Russia, Iran, and parts of the global south. In a way, the trade war never ended, it just evolved. So what does the future hold? Some experts believe we're heading toward a bipolar economic world where the U.S. and China each build their own trade and tech ecosystems. Others warn that this fragmentation could hurt global growth and increase the risk of conflict. One thing is certain: the U.S.-China trade war was more than just a series of tariffs. It marked the beginning of a new era in global politics, one defined by rivalry, resilience, and realignment. And we'll be here to follow it all, every step of the way. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story from our channel, where history, power, and geopolitics collide. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed.